bit about myself first, and I am excited to be here because this is a topic I'm very passionate about. Obviously, I'm a full-time artist. I have been doing art for about 50 years, a long time, since I was 10, and my sister sat with me and showed me how to draw using a line relationship. And it started a spark in me. And my other sister, who's very creative, sat with me and taught me how to sew with a needle and thread. I grew up in a very impoverished home. My mom was a single mother of 6 kids in the 60s, so there weren't a lot of resources. She worked all the time, and we were kind of hellions on the loose. My oldest brother took care of me, but we didn't have a lot of stuff, and if we wanted something outside of the food, shelter, clothing that she was struggling to provide, we had to make it or create it or, you know, come up with something imaginative to occupy us besides going to jail. So I came from a very creative, nurturing environment in that sense, and that, like, you know, if you want it, make it. So that's where my art journey started, relatively. Then life kind of went on, and I did what everybody tells you to do, which is, you know, go to school, go to college, get a career, support yourself, get a JOB. And my JOB was, I was a trial and litigation paralegal for 20 years. And on the side note of that, I was a touring professional comic for that same time. I spent my weekdays in the law firm with really boring and intense attorneys, and then I would go on the weekend and talk to crowds of drunk people. So, you know, seemed to balance out. The attorneys would always say, "I bet you have a lot to talk about because, you know, I bet you make lots of jokes about us." I said, "No, you guys are not funny." Not funny. But about 12 years ago, and I always did art as a sideline. I ended up being a single mother myself with 3 kids, and the paralegal and the comedy didn't pay well, other than it was fun, and, you know, it just wasn't enough. So I would do craft shows and art shows. I was sort of a as-needed artist. I would just make something I wanted. I still have that background of like, oh, I like that painting. I can't afford to buy it. I'll paint something similar. Or I like that blanket. Let me make one. Or, you know, it was sort of a necessity more than something I considered as a career option. And then in 2005, in 2004 I met, and then in 2005 I married my husband and gained 2 more children. And in about 2 years into our relationship, we were both working professionals, we started looking at the idea of, is there something we can do as a business using our own resources and really start making ourselves a commodity that we work so hard on. And so we started looking at home-based businesses as something we could do. And started doing vitamins for a while. And I went to a workshop at the encouragement of our business coach that she thought would help us grow our vitamin business more. And ultimately, after 3 days of this submersive exploring who we are and what really lights us up and what makes us tick, time and time again through the exercises we were doing, I was realizing it was art, it was creativity. That was my happy place. That's where I wanted to be, that's what I wanted to do. So to her dismay, I came out of there and called her and said, I don't want to sell vitamins anymore. Thanks for the suggestion of the workshop, but I'm leaving you and I'm going to pursue art. And I was blessed enough to have a husband that when I said, you know, I really think I need to see where this will go, I need to do this, he didn't say, okay, you're cray-cray, go back to work. He said, I support you 100% if you want to do that. So we opened a business in Rockville called the Art Barn. That's where I met Debbie. And it was a gallery and a gift shop, and I consigned artists, and I taught classes, and started building back up the skills that I had in high school. And so I took a little bit of art in college, but I majored in English. So I started really working on my skills and also a way to share, to get other people plugged into their skills and have opportunities. So we did that for many years and taught a lot of people. That was a very wonderful experience for me. I taught homeschooled children art and adults, and but it became where I was really managing artists and teaching and not working on my own craft enough. So we sort of scaled back, and we decided to make it more of a working studio, and I still taught classes. And then we moved into just where I had a private studio and was really hunkered down on my art. And in the last 5 or 6 years, it's really been wonderful. I've had some wonderful experiences. I was published twice in mixed media publications for Northlight. I was featured in Nashville Arts Magazine, and then this year I was told I'm the Painter Laureate for Murfreesboro for 2020, which really means I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff and not have time to paint. But I'm very honored by that, because now I can reach out into my community more having that platform. So that's a little bit of my history. And the topic really for me on this is to talk about how art feeds our soul. And first off, well, I want to sort of split it into 2 areas, because there's the makers and the creators, and then there's the people who buy art or look at art or let art affect them. So where do you fall in that? But I believe, and Debbie will back this up, that we are all creative. We all have an artist in us. I really believe that when we're conceived and we're pure little positive balls of energy waiting to come into this world, we're coming here to create something, to make something, to do something special. But we lose sight of it with careers and jobs and things that we're told by society have to happen. And so we lose sight of what that is. So getting back on track, because this is where the memory part comes. So what does it look like? Like, I paint and I sculpt. That's an obvious art thing. But where's your creativity? Where does that fit for you? And I think that making something, anything, if it's a thought or a dream or an imagination, and you strive to bring it into this world, into reality, into this realm, you're a maker, you're a creator, and you're an artist. And it can look like anything from, are you knitting or crocheting? Crocheting, cake decorating, woodworking, landscape, gardening. What else? You know, sculpture. Quilting,
writing,
decorating, writing, poetry, music, singing. They're all gifts that we have to contribute, and that's all in the maker realm. But maybe you haven't found that voice. You don't know what you want to do, but there's something there. And I think that, you know, if you think about, I love this quote by Rumi, let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. That's Rumi. So there's 100 different ways we can create and bring our gift and feed our soul by doing that. I think the greatest respect an artist can pay to music is to give it life. That's Pablo Caslo. So it's really about finding that voice. And if you don't, you spend a lot of time sort of denying who you are. I remember in this workshop, they asked this question, and it was really profound how everybody in the workshop raised their hands, because to me I thought, well, I'm the only one who thinks this. When I was a paralegal and I was working, and I was at a point with my career where I was very highly regarded. I was working with large firms and doing these really high-profile cases, and it was at a tenure with it and was making what I should have made in that. You know, there was no doubt that they recognized me for my skill, but I always had this sort of subconscious thought of any minute someone's going to figure out that I'm a fraud, that I'm a phony, that I don't belong here. They're going to know that I'm just fooling them, that I'm just not, I am not this person they think I am. They're going to know, they're going to find out. And they ask in this workshop how many people think that, and I thought, I'm going to be the only one to raise my hand. And everybody in the room raised their hand, because I believe that that was that point where I realized that I was starving the artist, that there was something there that I wasn't doing, and that's when I realized that that's my true self. And I'm just, that voice that I was thinking was going to come from them about me being a fraud was really me saying, you're being a phony, you're not being yourself here. So I went on the journey to find out that, and in the course of that, there were 3 books that had a huge impact on me, 2 early on, and I recommend them highly. Because if you're sitting there and you don't know for sure what it is you do that's creative, or as a maker, or what you're meant to be doing, it's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. I don't know if any of you have ever read this, but it's a short read, and I warn you when you read it to, just be prepared, because I have shared this book. I shared this book with a longtime friend of mine who was in this sort of accounting, and if you're an accountant, nothing against you, but artists don't like math very much. But he was an accountant, and he read the book, and he said, I'm going to quit my job. I'm like, whoa. He said, I really feel like I need to go and be an artist. And pursue it. And actually, he wanted to be writing screenplays, and I said, why don't you just start working on that screenplay? I don't want your wife to call me and say, what'd you do? And then this one is wonderful. It's called The Artist's Way, and it's just a journey into trying to really find that place that you may want to be as a creator. It's a kind of a workbook. You do assignments, one of which is to write 3 pages every day, and I'm on book 40, writing 3 pages every day. So, but it's great.
What was the name of that one?
Sorry?
What was the name of that book?
I'm sorry, yeah, it's The Artist's Way, and it's by Julia Cameron. And actually there are a lot of groups that meet and go through this book and have a lot of fun and sharing. It's a very good one. And the third one I read recently, like in the last 4 or 5 years, on my tablets. I don't have a copy of it, but it's called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And Elizabeth Gilbert is the woman who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. You might be familiar with that title. And it's one about listening to the nudges, about finding out what it is you do. So how art feeds the soul as a maker, for me, I call it getting in the zone. Just finding that place and space where I can create. And it sometimes means tuning out the world, getting away from noise and external everything. And there's a good quote, this one's by Thomas Merton. Art enables us to find ourselves and lose ourselves at the same time. And there is something in that energy that surrounds us when we're in that place of just doing the thing we love. Like when you crochet, I'm sure it's in the rhythm of the stitches and that movement. And, is anybody in here in an art, do arts of any kind? What do you do?
I paint and draw and craft.
Yeah, so when you're in that space of that creativity, it's kind of like everything else falls away. I mean, you get this sort of sense of peace that comes over you. And my husband has learned when I'm in the zone not to interrupt me. Because it's sort of like kicking a beehive, I call it. It takes me a while to get there, first of all. It takes about 30 to 40 minutes of working on a painting or sculpting to really get in that place. And then if someone kind of interrupts you, it's like being woken from a sound sleep, and you're just like, what's happening? And then it takes that other time to get back there. But when you're there, it's amazing what shows up. One of my favorite experiences when I'm in that place and I'm really feeding my soul is that when I do that, sometimes the muse or a voice will get in my head about making a certain piece of art. And it may not be art I would normally ever create, but it's just pounding at my head. And this one particular time, I was getting ready for a show, and I had this sort of theme that I was working in, and I was doing this genre of art that wasn't at all like this piece that was nudging me and nudging me and nudging me. And I couldn't, I woke up with it in my head and I'm like, get out of here, what is that? That's weird, I don't do that. And it kept coming back and it kept coming back. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll sketch it out. So I got out just a little something and the muse is like, no, want it bigger. And I started painting this very large size painting. Not anything I would ever paint. And I'm like, what is this? This is very, very different for me. And it was some figures, and they were in this linear form, and there was this stuff behind it. And I'm like, I don't even know what this is. But I worked on it for 3 days. I couldn't leave it alone. And then I thought, okay, well, and if you put it next to everything else I made, you'd go, who made that? Because that's not you. And I hung it in the art barn, and someone came and looked at it and wept.
Mm. Wow. Oh.
Sorry, I swore I wasn't going to do this, but it was powerful. You get to be a vessel for something you don't even know why. So. Sorry, Debbie. I wasn't going to call her out, but it was a painting, and she completely was moved by it. And I had no reason to paint it except that something said, someone needs this. So, as a maker, you get to have that opportunity to touch other lives. You get to reach out and share what you do, and you never know, you never know who is waiting for you to give your gift to them, and that's an important thing. Okay, don't cry. It says in big notes here, don't cry. I had to do an acceptance speech for this laureate thing, and when I talk about things in my heart, if I get angry, I blubber through an argument, and I cry when I'm completely excited and happy. So it's, and as artists too, we're historians and we're documentarians, and we're telling the story of what society looks like for us in a way that other people might not, that the news or the media or the typical historians tell one version, but really if you want to see history and you want to know what's happened in the world, it's in the museums and the galleries and in the everyday artifacts and the objects and the pottery and in the knitted hat. You don't know what it's going to look like forever from now, and someone might dig that knitted hat up and you think, I'm just knitting this hat for this person that I care about. And they'll dig it up and they'll go, look at these fibers and look at this color and this yarn and these stitches. Like, I can't even believe things like this existed. And what kind of tools did they use to make this thing? So it's sort of almost like we have a duty and an obligation as creators to really tell the stories, to tell the real stories about what's happening. I'm working on a series of paintings right now about the environment and climate change because I'm very passionate about that. And people who have known me for my happy little houses and cute little fairies and things like that are like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm compelled to tell these stories because maybe they're not getting told in other ways. And when I do that work, when I'm tuned into that part of myself, then I really feel like I'm purposeful. I'm really on purpose when I make that kind of art, or when I listen to the muse and I create a piece that's not for me and not of me, and I'm outside of my own head and I'm letting that process kind of feed who I am. As partakers of the arts, it's really wonderful when you see something that stirs your emotions, that you look at and it has a profound impact on you, or it tells a part of your history, and it's important to have those things around you. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Wayne Dyer, but I'm a huge Wayne Dyer fan, and he talked about how just having a photo of smiling people somewhere where you can see it makes you smile. Like, it elevates your mood, and it share it. You get to share as a maker. You get to share, and as a patron, you get to share. You get to share experience. So it's important to do. I am not keeping track of time very well.
Oh, there's a clock right here.
Okay. So I don't even know how long I've been talking. I meant to bring my.
No, you got
You're doing great.
you
You're
got
doing
2 minutes,
great.
15 minutes.
I have 15 more minutes. In comedy, we used to we call it getting the light. They go, get off the stage. They would give you that. When I was 3, no, I won't go through there. There were some experiences I wanted to share with you. Just give me a minute. I'll be right there. Teaching. Oh, this was good. I wish I'd shared that. No. I wish I'd gone there. There's more. As I sat and meditated, I thought about, let me just say what people might want to hear and feel about art. Boy, I feel like I really covered a lot. Oh, this is a wonderful quote by Felicia Rashad, and it says, before a child talks, they sing. Before they write, they draw. As soon as they stand, they dance. Art is fundamental to the human expression. And people often talk about starving artists. I think, did I say this already? That to me, it's not about starving for money or things. It's starving the artist is what it really should say. Because I don't think art, if you're creating art, if you're making the things that make you happy and fulfill you, then there's no way you can be starved. But if you deny that and you don't allow yourself to have that experience, and you feel like a fraud, and you walk around without that fulfillment, then that's the starving artist side. I mean, art is the kind of thing, when I sell art, it's feast or famine. You know, there'll be long periods of dry spells of like, the art doesn't sell, and then it'll, you know, be selling like crazy. And I never define that as starving. As long as I'm able to make art and do art, I feel fulfilled. I feel satisfied, and I don't feel like I'm starving. It does help that my husband supports me in those dry spells, but I don't think it would bother me. In fact, when I did stand-up comedy, and that was another type of art for me, and storytelling, I always said, you know, if it weren't for my children, I would live in a car and eat peanut butter and travel around the country to do that, because that connection that I got to have with the audience in those moments, and take people away from where they were feeling sad or blue or having all these worries to being filled with laughter, was a wonderful experience to be able to do that. It's also a really gratifying thing to have people come into one of my shows and share with me that that makes them joyful, that the art makes them smile, that it makes them happy. That's a wonderful feeling to have and share with people. It's my greatest reward in this, you know, besides having that kind of Zen time alone with the canvas and the clay and sculpting, is having that shared experience with people, but also having the ability to teach art and to ignite that sort of side of it. I teach a lot of classes on a lot of types of art, and it's really fun to see someone sparked. And it doesn't matter that they don't paint a masterpiece the second they sit down. We all put a lot of pressure on ourselves to say that the art we make has to be really profound and really great, and you know, you stare at a blank canvas and think, I've got to paint a masterpiece or it doesn't count. And it does, it all counts. And to be able to sort of just get that little fire burning in people, I've had so many students come into the classroom and tell me stories of people who had discouraged them as artists, which I think is tragic. You know, that their voices around what art meant were so negative. Oh, you can't make art, or you can't make a living at art. Art isn't a real thing. Art can come after all the chores are done. Mm-hmm. I grew up with that adage. You know, we had chores, and then we could do art. So, but to be able to sort of break that mold and to get that voice out of their head, just even if it's just for the hour and a half they're in my classroom, to have them just fully expressing themselves. And it's all beautiful to me. I've had people, you know, if I were jurying an art show, I'd go, well, I don't know. But to see them having that expression and putting that down on paper, it's the most beautiful thing ever. And it really does feed my soul to be able to share that. You know, and I hate to keep bringing you up, but Debbie is a classic example of how exciting that can be. She took a lot of classes from me, and I remember the sewing class, beginning sewing, and I don't know how well you all know her, but she quilts like a fiend. But beginning sewing, she brought her sewing machine, she didn't even know how to thread it. So our first lesson was down here, up here, over here. But she took it and she ran with it. Like, she took the machine, and so there was just these little assignments in between our lessons, and she'd come back and have like 20 of them done instead of one. You know, like, oh, I did this, and then within weeks of the first quilting class she took, she was making a full-size quilt, a lap quilt, a big quilt for Debbie, for a beginner. And now she's, you know, I can't keep up. She makes so many of them. So it's really an honor to be able to be a little, even a tiny bit of a catalyst for that, for her, because not everybody does that, but some people do, and she's the reason. If I teach 20 and I get one Debbie, I'm very fulfilled. I really do feel like I get nourished. I think the last thing I would want to say is that, you know, if you have a gift and you're not sharing it, you're kind of being selfish. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I think if you have it, use it and share it. Like, there are so many little souls that you can feed with your gifts that maybe aren't getting fed. So that's one side of it. And you never know, if you really pursue it, where it will lead you, what you'll be able to do, and what you can accomplish. You know, I get the wonderful opportunity of doing portraits for the underserved and underprivileged as a laureate, to show people who would not otherwise have the availability to have a portrait made, how an artist sees them, and that's magical. So it feeds my soul, but then they get something too. It's like we're sharing a big sub sandwich, and we get to feast together. You know, we get to eat together and have a meal. So I think I've about run out of things to say. But
Thank you.